Unity minister and author Eric Butterworth wrote a book titled In the Flow of Life. And in it, he wrote the following: "We are living today in a complex and changing world. If there is one thing one needs more than anything else, it is light. Light in terms of insight into self, guidance along life's way, knowledge of the secrets of the universe, and the wisdom to use light and not abuse it. The clearest thinkers the race has produced have always seen the course of their lives as a quest for light. It is said that Goethe, who spent his life on this quest, gasped the last words on his deathbed: more light." Light is our theme today, and not just light itself, but also its effusion, its outpouring, its outflow, its expression. And it's also light as seen from a spiritual perspective. And so what might that mean? Well, we can turn to our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, who defined light as the illumination of spirit resident in the center of every being. Or we could turn to Elizabeth Sand Turner, who wrote a trilogy of what have become Unity classics on metaphysical Bible interpretation, who wrote in the foreword to her book, "Let There Be Light," "Our great need is for light, which represents illumination, intelligence, wisdom." She noted that it's how we attune our minds to the spirit of truth, that these qualities are what scatters the darkness of limited human reasoning and supplants it with understanding. And one more, author Winifred Wilkinson Hausman, whose book, Your God-Given Potential, I offered to you at the beginning of this year in support of our honoring Unity's teachings of the 12 powers throughout the year. And in the chapter in her book that she titled, Let Your Light Shine, she described light as it applied to Jesus and as it applies to us today, by noting that he always acted and spoke from the light within himself, the light that enabled him to judge by spiritual methods, to answer from divine insight into the motives of others, the potentiality for good, and the revelation of the Christ within. So I think all of that makes it pretty clear that today we are speaking of light as emanating from the Christ presence within us, our call to access that, tap into it, shine it forth, express it into this world in any number of possible ways. And so let's take a closer look into this light. And we're going to begin with the first reference offered by Mr. Butterworth, that of light in terms of insight to self. Insight to self. Butterworth had made mention of those he termed the clearest thinkers the race had produced, and their seeming unending quest for light throughout their lives. And it oftentimes, in those times, the quest was a search for light out there somewhere, outside of themselves. Or light was often seen as being present in ideas or present in innovations, or sometimes light was seen as the mind of that which had produced the ideas or the innovations. And then we know that when Jesus came along and was offering his teachings and his ministry, many of his followers saw him as the light. But we know that that is not what Jesus wanted, nor was it what he was teaching. Now, yes, he absolutely claimed his own light. He said it. He said it when he claimed that I am the light of the world. But he also said, you are the light of the world, and to let your light so shine. We often quote those two lines from scripture. I am the light of the world. You are the light of the world. But today I want to expand on that a bit by offering some of the verses that precede and then come after those two specific verses. And so what I'm going to be sharing comes from the 5th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. And that chapter of Matthew's Gospel begins with what we've come to know as the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus has offered the 8 Beatitudes, the blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek, blessed are those who mourn, and so on and so forth. And then to all that are gathered with him, he says, you are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Now, if you ever want to read a beautiful interpretation of the Sermon on the Mount, there is a book titled Meditations on the Mount. It's written by a longtime Unity minister, Bible scholar, Ed Townley. And I'd like to share a little bit of his interpretations of what I just shared. So let's start with salt of the earth. Now, literal salt does not have to become anything else. You don't have to mix it with anything. It doesn't need to be burned or processed to become anything else. It has its unique quality as it is of its taste. And it serves its purpose by simply being salty and enhancing whatever food you may, add it to. So whenever we observe ourselves as being the salt of the earth, it's to see our lives enhanced when we allow our true essence to express. And sometimes we forget about that, or even believe that we've lost the ability to recognize that, to recognize our saltiness, our uniqueness, the essential quality that defines us. And that is our inner light, the light of the Christ, God's presence in us. And we can restore that at any time simply by choosing anew to embrace once again our sacred natures. And when we do that, it is only the first step, because Jesus said it wasn't enough just to know our essence. It wasn't enough. We also had to bring this inner light out into the world, shine it into the world, not keep it hidden from others. And Ed writes, we cannot keep our new spiritual awareness a secret, hiding it from others and keeping its illumination for ourselves. Why? Because we have such a unique light that we must be willing to share that light with others who have no light themselves? Not at all. Rather, we must allow our light to encourage others to find the same light within themselves, just as Jesus was using his light to help us see ours. It is in sharing the light that we will create the kingdom of heaven together. So with this new or perhaps renewed insight into self, we can turn to Butterworth's next possible use of light, our light, and that is the guidance along life's way. Guidance along life's way. And we're going to look at just one very specific kind of guidance today, not just the overall, just one specific kind. And it arises out of one of the ways that Butterworth was viewing light in his book, when he wrote that light is the reality of God within all creation. It's the reality of our own potential. All overcoming, all healing, all self-expansion is the inevitable effect of the dawning of the light within and its effusion without. Our specificity for today is brought forth by Butterworth's use of another verse from Scripture, from the Old Testament, in support of those words of his I just shared. It comes from the book of Isaiah in the 58th chapter. And as it is with so much of the scriptural verses from Old and New Testament, so much reference can be found in Jesus's teachings that were, tied back to the times of the Old Testament writings as well. And that's the case here. What you'll hear me say now from Isaiah, you can also find in Matthew's gospel. So I want to give you a little bit of a context first, by saying that it's believed by the scholars that the latter chapters of Isaiah, from which I will be reading, were written after the Jewish exile, and at a time when various attempts were being made to reestablishing the life of the Jewish people and the Jewish community in and around Jerusalem. And in the attempts to do so, the people were often doing a whole lot of praying and fasting and worshiping and so forth. And a whole lot of that was done very publicly and in ways that seemed to be more self-serving than sacred, more self-serving than just truly coming from a place in their hearts. And there was behavior of all kinds that I'm just going to put into one category of promoting trouble, not so much goodwill taking place amongst the people at that time. And so Isaiah, what I'm going to share, offers a response to the fasting in particular that was being witnessed by these people, offering a fasting that looked very different than the process they were offering and expressing, and in turn inciting trouble. So in Isaiah 58, it reads, "Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed to go free and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them and not hide yourself from your own kin? Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly." So do you hear the familiarity in that, and in Jesus, from that to Jesus's teachings? I mean, do you remember when Jesus was talking to his disciples and he's telling them that when I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. And they got all confused, saying, well, you don't remember doing any of that for you. And then he tells them that when you did it for the least of these, who he said were members of his family, then you had done it for me. So the message of old and new was one of telling people to stop talking about their holiness. Stop being out there bragging and doing all this formal and self-serving forms of worship. The message, old and new, is to stop all of that, and in today's terms, get involved with some social action. If light really is the reality of God in all creation, stop misbehaving, stop causing trouble, and start offering some acts of goodwill. Use your God-given potential to bring forth that divine light in you, and use it to offer some hope and some guidance and a promise of new life to others. Help them to recognize this very same potential within themselves. That piece of scripture, that call to goodwill, is perhaps the epitome of the dawning of the light within and its effusion without. This brings us to the third of Eric Butterworth's observance of light, that of its relationship to gaining knowledge of the secrets of the universe. Gaining knowledge of the secrets of the universe. Now that's an interesting one, I think, because can we really know what's a secret? Or is it more that we each just individually seek and search and learn and look, and then we just come to our own conclusions about what we really, quote unquote, know? Butterworth made a point that, we humans, we are forever at crossroads in our lives. Whatever, so many times, so many circumstances, so many situations, we find ourselves asking, okay, which way do I go? What options do I have? What do I choose? What decision do I make? And sometimes there's fear, of making a decision, because and that fear can be overwhelming when there's a bit of uncertainty around it, or oftentimes even the littlest of decisions, about anything that we do can have great impact and lasting impact on our lives. We're probably all familiar with the writings of, Robert Frost, and his coming to the place in the road where, the path split into two divergent roads and he chose the one less traveled. Well, not all of us are like that. Not all of us are like that. Many of us want to know more definitively what's on those roads before we start making our choice. And that goes back for centuries. Humankind has long yearned to be able to see beyond the line of the horizons in front of us, to see the ultimate course of the various roads that come upon us. Before religion became a thing, before it was formalized, you had people like, the medicine men or the fortune tellers and the prophets and the seers who claimed that they were able, to see into the future. And then the word came along, providence, which was very often used, long been used as a synonym for God. And the word providence comes from root words that mean to see forward. If you just look in the dictionary, one of the definitions you'll find of religion is to define it as divine revelation for human guidance. Well, Butterworth believes that we have always instinctively sensed a dimension of life in which there flows, as he describes it, like an underground stream, this directive force that he says is forever correspondent with every conscious need. So how do we know if that instinct is of spirit or if it is of a very strong human will? How do we know if it's divine guidance or human will and intellect alone that's telling us the secrets that we want to know? I've been asked that question so many times over the years that I've been in ministry, and I don't think that there's just one pat answer for that. And from my own experience alone, I know that there have been times when I have felt down to my core that there was something coming through that was absolutely of spirit. And then about 3 seconds later, there comes my human mind trying to convince me otherwise. But this past Friday morning, when I entered into my time of prayer before sitting down to start writing the lesson, I was reading one of what I like to call them my daily emails of inspiration. And one of them gave me an idea that might be able to help us work in bringing spirit and mind together to work in harmony here. Now, first, I just had to smile that the daily email I'm referencing is titled First Light Meditation, which was so appropriate for today. And the passage for meditation on Friday was from Howard Thurman. Howard Thurman was an American author and philosopher. He was a theologian. He was a civil rights leader. And he offered this. He said, I seek this day an active wonder. An active wonder is the desperate need of my mind and spirit. The awareness of the unexplored and the untried until I find my way into their secret places. This I need and I seek. The illumination of wonder over my familiar landscape, revealing ordinary things, fresh glories, making manifest in my familiar heights and depths that which I have never known. This I need and I seek this day. Harmony of mind and spirit coming together, working together as we seek more knowledge of the secrets of the universe. So this brings us to the fourth and final perspective of light for today from Mr. Butterworth, and it is the wisdom to use light and not abuse it. To use light, not abuse it. Now, what I'm going to say next, I want you to take very literally and do. Visualize the light of God enfolding you. For just 1 minute, rest there in the light. those words that invited you into that time of silence, that time of being enfolded in Spirit's light, are from a book titled God Will See You Through by Mary Kupferl. Taking 1 minute, one prayerful minute to rest in the enfoldment of the light of Spirit can work wonders in helping you recognize and embrace your own sacred light and put it to good use, not abuse. It works wonders by bringing to light any ways in which you may be blocking that flow of life, as Eric Butterworth described it to be, a flow that can become constricted, an abuse of our light, if our minds are cluttered with false concepts or the world standards or just strictly human intellectual evaluation. It works wonders by energizing your willingness to know and to follow the guidance of Spirit in your life, and by reminding you in just that 1 minute that it is available in every minute, and it's coming forth from a wellspring that is inexhaustible and from a source that can never be extinguished. I began today by sharing Eric Butterworth's opinion that we are living today in a complex and changing world. Of course we are. And I believe that one thing it needs more than anything else is an effusion of light. Your light, it is the light of God in you. It is the reality of your potential. Share it. Please share it so that others can see the same truth about themselves reflecting back to them. Share it so that they might join with you in enfolding this world in a blanket of warmth and comfort and hope and healing. God bless you.